Every single morning, a man named Daniel Cole set his alarm for 4:45 a.m. Not because he had somewhere to be, because he was terrified of what would happen if he stopped. 3 years earlier, Daniel had everything figured out. A steady job in logistics, a fiancée named Rachel, and a 5-year plan taped inside his closet door. Then, in the space of 4 months, he lost all three. The company downsized, Rachel left, and the plan, the one he'd built his whole identity around, became a piece of paper mocking him every time he opened that closet. He didn't fall apart the way people expect. There was no dramatic breakdown, no rock-bottom moment you could put in a movie. Instead, something quieter happened. He just stopped trying. He'd wake up, scroll his phone for 2 hours, tell himself he'd start Monday. Then Monday would become next Monday. 6 months turned into a year. What scared Daniel most wasn't the failure, it was how comfortable he'd gotten inside it. Then one afternoon, his 11-year-old nephew, Marcus, came over while his sister ran errands. Marcus was building a model airplane, the kind with 100 tiny plastic pieces and instructions in 5 languages. Daniel watched him glue a wing on backward, curse under his breath the way kids do when they think no one's listening, then rip it off and start over. "Doesn't that frustrate you?" Daniel asked. Marcus didn't even look up. "It's supposed to be hard. That's how you know you're building something real." Daniel laughed it off. But that sentence followed him into the kitchen, into the shower, into bed that night. A kid who couldn't even drive yet had just said something Daniel hadn't understood in 3 decades of living. The next morning, for no reason he could fully explain, Daniel got up before his alarm. He didn't have a plan, he didn't have motivation. He just laced up a pair of running shoes that had been sitting in his closet next to that 5-year plan, and he walked outside. He made it 4 blocks before his lungs were on fire and he had to stop, hands on his knees, humiliated by his own body. A woman, walking her dog, jogged past him without breaking a sweat. Daniel felt smaller than he had in months. But here's the part nobody tells you about starting over. The first step is never the hard one. It's the 12th step 3 weeks later, when nothing has changed yet, and quitting will be so much easier than showing up again. Daniel almost quit on day 9. He stood in his kitchen at 4:45 a.m., shoes in hand, and thought about every reason this was pointless. He was 30 pounds out of shape. He had no job, no direction, no proof this would matter. Then he thought about Marcus, gluing that wing back on for the 3rd time, muttering to himself, refusing to look up and admit defeat. So Daniel went back outside. 4 blocks became 6. 6 became a mile. It took him 5 weeks to run a single mile without stopping, and when he finally did it, he stood in the middle of an empty street at sunrise and cried like he hadn't cried since Rachel left. It wasn't about the mile, it was about proving to himself that he could still finish something. That small proof cracked something open. If he could rebuild his body one uncomfortable morning at a time, maybe he could rebuild the rest too. He updated a resume he'd been avoiding for over a year. He reached out to a former co-worker, swallowing the shame of admitting he needed help. He got turned down twice before a small distribution company took a chance on him. The job wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the 5-year plan taped inside his closet. But it was his, and he'd earned it one hard morning at a time. Here's the lesson Daniel would tell you himself if you asked him today. Discipline was never about motivation. Motivation shows up for the highlight reel, the day you finally cross the finish line. But discipline is what shows up at 4:45 a.m, when nobody's watching, when there's no proof anything is working, when quitting would be so much easier and nobody would even know. The truth is, most people don't fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they stopped showing up right before things were about to change. The version of you 6 months from now is being built right now, in the boring, uncomfortable, unglamorous mornings you're tempted to skip. You don't need a 5-year plan taped to your closet door. You need one uncomfortable action today, one phone call you've been avoiding, 1 mile you don't think you can run, one version of yourself you haven't given a real chance to yet. Daniel still runs most mornings, not because it's easy, because he finally understands what his nephew knew all along. It's supposed to be hard. That's how you know you're building something real. So whatever you've been putting off, whatever plan is sitting in a closet somewhere collecting dust, stop waiting for motivation to show up and give you permission. Get up tomorrow morning before you feel ready. Because readiness was never the requirement. Showing up was.